Of course, it's just 4 years before Luther nails the 95 Theses. We're looking at conceptual developments, and the development of the idea of sovereignty, though it is chronologically later, obviously is not influential in terms of Bodine, but those ideas, you see, are circulating. And in the case of Machiavelli, you don't even have the restraint of the natural law. You have power politics, a completely naturalistic approach to political theory. Machiavelli is not disposed to consider morality when he looks at the state at all. The state is a natural institution, and all we are interested when we evaluate the state, all we are interested in evaluating is its efficiency. Does the state get the job done? How can the state get the job done? Political theory is a means to end study. It is not a consideration of how the way of justice intersects with the way of fact. Machiavelli believed that the old virtues promulgated by Christianity, the virtues of humility and modesty and so forth, were in fact a detriment to the efficient operation of the state. The best prince is one that is ruthless and self-centered, one who expresses ambition and power. Ambition and power have no limit. Those who are ambitious, those who wish to gain power, will find once they have gained their preliminary goal, there's more power to be gained, more ambition. But they also find this, that because of competition among ambitious men, the exercise of power must be exclusive. You can't tolerate somebody else having power in your domain, because that then puts some kind of, crimps your style. It gets in the way of your own ambition. And so Machiavelli promotes the idea of the state and power politics. Machiavelli said men are basically stupid and irrational. They are not capable of governing themselves intelligently. They are ruled by passion rather than by reason. And particularly, there is this ambition, this passion in man. However, if everybody's allowed to pursue their own ambitions, if we have an anarchistic situation, you'll only have strife in the state. The only way to have, then, peace and prosperity in the state is to have a very strong king. But of course, Christian religion has corrupted what we know from nature, the basic ambition and power-seeking of men. And so Christianity has become an obstacle for the state running efficiently. How do you like that? By exalting meekness and humility and other worldliness, Christianity does not promote a strong state. Because in a strong state, you're going to get the most ambitious man to exercise his power over all the rest. And he'll be ruthless in that. Except Christians tell us we shouldn't be ruthless. But a good prince will be ruthless. The ideal prince is ruthless. Now, Machiavelli says we could talk about an ideal situation where you have a government by the people. Because if you could have a government by the people, that'd be better than a government by a prince. But he says you're talking fairy tales. Government by the people just doesn't work because of the nature of people. That might be nice, but that's not the way things are. This is interesting. And again, we take this for granted. In our day and age, when you talk about politics, If you get very idealistic, you try to get normative or prescriptive, here's the way it really ought to be. You know what people will tell you? They'll tell you, that ain't politics. Get real. The fact is, we're not going to live in that kind of world, so let's get down. But just think about this. Should we teach abstinence or should we pass out condoms in the public schools if we're worried about the AIDS epidemic? Have you ever heard this line of thought? Well, abstinence would be far better, but hey, in the real world, you better pass out condoms anyway. Well, that line of thinking, you see, goes all the way back and, of course, further than. But Machiavelli is right there. He says, oh, yeah, you can talk to me about what would be ideal in government, but I'm going to tell you what's real. And the prince must be ruthless. He must take his ambition to the max. I quote, the only way to establish any kind of order is to establish some superior power which, with a royal hand and with full and absolute powers, may put a curb upon the excessive ambition and corruption of the powerful. Machiavelli said, because the prince is subject to the same kind of irrationality and passions of the population at large, most princes will be tyrants. Yeah, because I accept it. Machiavelli has said that most princes will be tyrants because they too are irrational, men of passion, and so forth. But then he does talk about a virtuous prince. And I want you to catch this. This is crucial. When Machiavelli talks about a virtuous prince, though, he's not now going back to this idealistic. Well, he says, I know most princes will be tyrants, but this is what would be better if they would be nice guys and get along and be virtuous. No, for him to be a virtuous prince means to exercise your power more shrewdly and ruthlessly than the kind of crude power politics of the tyrant. The shrewd prince is the one who can get the state to serve his interests without turning them into rebels. Okay, so there's going to be a kind of sophistication of power politics now. Machiavelli says, yeah, you've got to have a ruthless prince, no doubt about that. But because of the ruthlessness and crudeness of most princes, what will happen is people will want to rise up against them. So, if you want to be a virtuous prince, that is, if you really want to get your way and be efficient in power politics, then here's advice for how you can be completely in control, but not foment rebellion among your people. Does this cynicism scare you? It should. The virtuous prince is not the one who says, I don't want to be a tyrant, because that's not a nice way to rule people. He's the man who says, yes, I want to be a tyrant, but I don't want it to appear that I'm being a tyrant. Because then the people will try to resist my will. And what do I want? I want my will to be dominant. And so by virtue, what Machiavelli means is not ethical value. Virtue is maintaining your power and getting your way. According to Machiavelli, there's not a realm of justice or ethical norms above the state by which the actions of the state must be justified. For him, there's no question about transcendent justice. There's only a question about what do men seek for and what can they do to produce what they are seeking. Are those normative questions? Are those ethical questions? What do men seek after, and what can they do to attain it? No, those are factual questions. He doesn't ask, what should men seek? He says, what do they seek? Well, they seek power. They're ambitious. Now, the only other question is, and how can they achieve it? How will they be able to gain the power that they seek? And so politics becomes a factual study of means to ends. It is not a study of how you bring the realm of justice into the realm of temporal relations and the power of the state. Now, what are the two principal instruments that are at the disposal of the ruthless prince who would be virtuous, that is, the man who would get his way? They are force and propaganda. Machiavelli says when the prince must use force, he must employ it ruthlessly, because it is far better to be feared than to be loved. If you want to be efficient as a politician and you have to choose between having the people love you and fear you, have them love you. Fear you. Because if they love you, they can stop loving you. When they don't get the things they want, they'll stop loving you. But if they fear you, it will make no difference whether you give them what they want. The fear will continue. Isn't that amazing? And of course, our power politicians today should learn that, because our power politicians today, if anything, are wimps, aren't they? And I'm not talking about just Democrats, Republicans too. Those politicians that cater to the population wanting to be loved and respected because of the pork barrel and the things we bring you and so forth, they don't realize that when you gain loyalty through that kind of devotion, it's fickle. People will go to the next person who loves them and they love in return because of what they get. Machiavelli said, forget that. Have the people fear you. So when you have to use power, use it ruthlessly. He said it will be better if you use it in a concentrated way. Don't dish out a little bit here and then next month a little bit and then next year and so forth, and always have to be at it. He said if you come down really hard at the beginning of your reign, then you get a reputation and you won't have to be using that power so much later. Now, whether you agree or disagree with this as a factual assessment, the thing that ought to chill you is that this is a consideration of political philosophy, how to get what you want. Be ruthless in the exercise of power. Force is indispensable, but when you can get your way without force, it is better, because the use of force is very expensive. You're going to have to call out the army and so forth and so on. If you would be a shrewd prince, he says, learn to use propaganda to win people over to your side. And in particular, Machiavelli says, learn to persuade people that you're devoted to what they want, even though you're not making any real concession to them at all. Now, I wasn't reading the evening news for this week, my friends. That is Machiavelli from back in the 1500s. Isn't that incredible? Learn through propaganda. Put the right spin on things so that people think you're giving them what they want, when in fact you haven't substantially conceded anything to their interest. He did recognize that not everyone will be duped. Always will be the Rush Limbaughs of this world who, want to poke a finger in the eye of these politicians. And so he said, propaganda must always be backed up by force. You have to deal very viciously with those who will not be duped. Now, of those ways of the various kinds of propaganda, Machiavelli said the most valuable of all is religion. So when you see Machiavelli talking about religion, he's not talking about the values, the absolute will of God, the justice that is brought to bear in temporal relationships. He's only talking about religion as a social phenomena that can be manipulated for the ruler to get his way. And so the new political ideal of the Renaissance, as we see it, I think, in its classic expression in Machiavelli, is a naturalistic study of the facts with a means to end interest, not in bringing justice into temporal affairs, but in simply accomplishing the ends of the state. Nationalism, the independence of the temporal power from the church in Dante, the supremacy of the temporal power in Marsiglio, the sovereignty, the uniform administration of one jurisdiction in Bodine, and in Machiavelli, a completely naturalistic understanding of power politics. The irony is that the literature of the Renaissance on political affairs also tends to be utopian. And after we take a short break here, we'll come back and look at Thomas More, Francis Bacon, Thomas Campanella, and Hobbes, and particular theses having to do with the political order that are classically, or if you will, essentially Renaissance in their outlook.